Welcome to episode 122 of the Whitetail Distraction Podcast. My name's Austin, and as of tomorrow, October 1st, it is officially archery season in Pennsylvania. I couldn't be more excited. I'm going to be in a tree. It's going to be magical. I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait. This episode kind of falls right into it. I mean, we've had him on before. People have been asking for him. If you don't know who he is, you're living under a rock. It's John Eberhart. I mean, the guy is a freaking legend. We talk about all kinds of stuff. People have been asking for, John to come back on. People have been asking for the Deer Slayer series, so it just seemed to fit. We kind of threw in like a little bit of, BS session, but it was mainly like a Deer Slayer series podcast, and I couldn't be more happy about it. It was awesome. It's packed full of information, lots of joking, lots of stories, all kinds of fun stuff. You guys are going to love it. But before we get into it, I got to take care of business real quick. First and foremost, Scree Gear. Unreal stuff, guys. Go check them out. Sign up for their VIP deals. You can do the text messages. You can do the emails. They are constantly running sales on stuff. Go over, check them out. If you want to try before you buy, they do their 14-day money-back guarantee, their lifetime warranty. It's unreal. Me and Charles wear the stuff all the time. It's unbelievably comfortable. Keeps you out in the woods longer. I can't say enough good things about it. Second, VIP Archery. We are both shooting combat vets this year, maybe shooting some commanders. We got to get them in and head over to their website. Check them out. There's so many good broadheads on their website, guys. I've been using them for years. Charles has been using them for years. We've shot countless deer with them. Freddy Krueger blood, guys. I mean, it's almost Halloween. Why not just do some Freddy Krueger blood? It's necessary. That's all I'm going to say. Check them out. And, third and final. Outland Manufacturing, Matt Garris. The dude is a freaking monster when it comes to, the hang and hunt game. If you want to get some tree stands, you want to get some climbing sticks, you want to get camera arms, saddle platforms, go over and check him out. He has like the best products when it comes to that stuff. The price point's right there. Just check him out. Trust me, you're going to love it. And that guy runs sales too all the time. It's awesome. But if you do me one more favor, head over to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you guys listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review or 4.9 or whatever you want to do. If you got good feedback, bad feedback, shoot us a message on one of our, social medias. Send us an email, all that fun stuff. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if you guys shoot a deer or you kill an elk or shoot a turkey or anything, send us some pictures, guys. We'd love to talk to you. We love answering questions. Hit us up. We're always around. So that's out of the way. Let's get into the episode. Here's John Eberhart, guys.
Hey, I just got back from lunch. Did you finish that report yet?
Well, not exactly. Still working on it. I'm not finished just yet. I got a little sidetracked, but I will get them to you first thing this afternoon.
It is first thing this afternoon.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but I mean, I am working on it.
What do you mean that the report isn't finished yet?
I'm still in the process of working on it. I've just been a little distracted.
Distracted? Our meeting starts in an hour.
I can have it.
No. What were you doing? Were you listening to another hunting podcast again? I swear, I give the staff in this office the freedom to do whatever they want to do as long as they meet a deadline. That is the first bullet underneath your job description. Pays attention to detail and deadlines. Dude, are you even listening to me right now?
All right, guys, we are back with a return guest. And come on, if you don't know the name John Eberhart, I am not sure what you're doing ever listening to podcasts at this point, because it just doesn't make sense. John Eberhart, podcast, hunting, those three things should be in every household of every hunting family that's ever existed. Am I right?
Yeah, man. I can't disagree one bit.
So, John, we had you on so early in this show. I mean, I think it was like the top 10 episodes or something. I mean, it was very early. Am I right?
Yeah.
Like super early.
It was.
And I couldn't believe it back then. We were, we're the same schoolgirls as we are, then as we are now. But man, I'm so honored to have you back, John. It's been, a long time, but we're always following up on what you're doing, been to some of your events. It's phenomenal. How's it going tonight, man? How are you?
Like I mentioned earlier, it's better than it should be. I'm retiring at the end of the year, and things are really well. I'm still going to do my YouTube videos, and I'm still going to do my whitetail workshops. I'm still going to write articles. I'm still going to hunt as hard as I can, even though I'm only shooting 40 pounds right now, and because I'm 72 years old and I've got arthritis. But I feel great. Other than my shoulders, life is really, really good right now.
That is fantastic to hear, my man. We are so happy you came on, and I think this is going to be a pretty good one. We're going to get into some fun stuff here.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, you look great, John, as well. Just to throw that out there, a little compliment. You do. You look good.
You do.
Like you said, I couldn't believe you throw that number out there. And I'm like, holy man, you don't look a day over 40, 45.
Well,
I told you we were schoolgirls.
When you work at hunting as hard as I do, because everything's public and free permission private properties. I've only got 2 private properties that I hunt. Everything else is public. You just got to work hard. So I work out all year to stay in shape for hunting and prepping locations and climbing trees. And, if you don't work out, and I just can't do what I could do if I didn't stay in shape. Let's put it that way. I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, especially with the mobile game, hunting mobile, climbing every single set that you do, you're up, you're coming back down, taking down. I mean, everything that you do, I know, on us as 30-year-olds, just young 30-year-olds, I get beat up at the end of the year after doing that day after day after day, morning, evening, you get beat up. I mean, your body it doesn't take it well if you're not ready for it.
That's right. That's absolutely. You only get into it what you put it, you only get out of it what you put into it, just like anything.
That's right. Yep. So I guess if anybody is listening to this and they don't know who you are, John, why don't you do your quick intro for us and just let everyone know who you are, where you're from?
Sure. Okay. John Eberhart. I am from Michigan. I've been bow hunting for 55 years. I've got 53 book bucks, 33 from Michigan. The other 20 are from out of state. I've only been out of state 3 times where I did not kill a book buck, and those were 1-week hunts. I go out of state during Michigan's gun season to continue bow hunting. I do not gun hunt. Everything I do is public land and knock on doors for free permission properties. And I just work really, really hard at bow hunting. I'm a writer. I've written 3 bow hunting books. I have a YouTube channel, Eberhart Outdoors. I do whitetail workshops in the spring. They're 2-day events. I write for Deer and Deer Hunting. Used to write for a lot of national magazines. I've kind of skinny that down a little bit, and I just love bow hunting, man. It's absolutely 100% my passion.
Well, I mean, with that resume, I guess it's safe to say you got tons of free time, right?
Oh, I got all kinds of free time. Right now, I'm answering about 20 to 30 email questions a day on general hunting questions. And like I mentioned to you guys, I've sent out a lot of scent control stuff because I'm a big scent lock, scent control guy. I don't pay attention to wind. And, and I'm filming all my own YouTube videos and editing them myself. So I'm kind of a one man show. So I stay busy. I'm retiring from my regular job. I'm a sales rep. I have been since 1992 in the hunting industry. And I'm retiring from that job at the end of this year. And I'll just focus on, tethered and my YouTube and my workshops and stuff like that, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. That's got to feel good too. You're right at that time now, you can freaking retire and just kind of do what you want, right? I mean, that's got to feel good.
I've always got a smile on my face anymore.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you talk to most retired people out there, they'll tell you they have less time after retirement than they did before. It just seems like one thing after another, because you're going to have to replace that with something. So like you said, you're going to pick up another hobby or something, either I'm sure something else is going to come down. You don't seem like the type of person that's going to sit back and relax.
Well, the workshops take a lot. I do seminars, I write, and the YouTube thing takes a lot of time. And, I mean, when you're videoing your own stuff, I don't video kills, but I video instructional stuff to help people learn how to bow hunt. There's plenty of kills on TV by guys that don't know what the hell they're doing, because TV guys hunt zoo like stuff. But I do everything the hard way, and I like to put that information out there for public land hunters and shorten their learning curve. So yeah, I'm going to continue doing that. I'll just be doing more of that once I retire from this job. I'll have more free time to do more.
There you go.
That's awesome. Looking forward to it, honestly.
Heck yeah. I know we talked about it a little bit before we hit the record button, but I went down to one of your workshops that you had here in Pittsburgh a couple years back. And I'll tell you what, even then at that point, I mean, I'm still very new into saddle hunting. I think this is fourth or fifth season doing this, but you know, I gained a lot from it. There was a lot of little tips, a lot of little tactics, just watching kind of your setup, because everybody does it a little different.
Yes.
Right. But a guy like you that's had, 30 plus now, right? 40 years almost, I would bet.
Saddle hunting for 40. This will be my 42nd season.
42nd year. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, someone like you that's been in a saddle for 42 years, if you're not open-minded to gain information from you, I mean, that's invaluable information in all reality. So I gained a lot. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. 47 of my book bucks came up from a saddle. So
there you go.
The saddle thing is ingrained in me. When I first bought a saddle, I didn't know what the hell it was. Nobody knew what it was. It was just a bunch of straps on a plastic bag, and I could just see by the picture on there that it was going to be something that I could move around the tree. It was something I could keep in my backpack. I didn't have to own tree stands. Nobody's going to steal it. It was safe. And, I'm always a forward thinker. So even though it was very awkward when I first bought it and took it out of the package, because there was no YouTube. I just had to figure it out myself. I could just see the advantages of it. And anytime I can see the long-term advantages of something, I go with it and I try to modify it and perfect it. Just like with ScentLock. ScentLock, first 2 years were kind of discovering how to properly care for it, how to properly store it, how to properly use it, what to use in conjunction with it. And once I figured all that stuff out, like into my third year using ScentLock, I don't pay attention to wind. But I just knew, even during the learning process, if I could get rid of 70% of my human odor, it was still going to be a perk. It was still going to be a plus. Did I ever think it was going to get to the point where I didn't have to pay attention to wind whatsoever? No, I never ever thought that, because I only had 35 years paying attention to wind 100%. So I never thought it was possible. But once that happened, the last 21 years, I've paid zero attention to wind direction. And I never get winded. So, but I saw the long-term perks of what it would do, even though it didn't do the full 199 to 100% initially. It took 2-3 years for me to get to that point. But once I got there, I mean, I never looked back. And people that don't take advantage of scent control, they're way behind in the game. I mean, to not take advantage of the technology that's out there, in my opinion, is ridiculously sinful. I mean, people spend money on way more money on certain clothing manufacturers than they should. And ScentLock is usually about half the price of what some of these other hunting manufacturers are that have zero technology. And with ScentLock, if you do it all right, you don't have to pay attention to wind. Yet people, I'm just shocked so few people do it. But I'll get off that train for this podcast. It's a train to me because it's such a big juggernaut. It's such a big juggernaut in bow hunting. I mean, when you can not pay attention to wind direction, that's the biggest game changer you can have in bow hunting. Period. End of discussion.
Yeah. I would love to see somebody with a 10 to 12 rows deep into the corn.
Well, and my point with that was,
good luck.
My point was and I don't know if it was on that video or not, if I were carrying a tree stand, walking through standing corn, even though I'm going down the corn rows, it's catching on everything. And you're just cussing and swearing and, so sweating and anything like that when you're carrying a tree stand and you got your bow and your backpack and sticks. The tree stand just makes it much more difficult because it hangs up on everything, because it's such a big frame and it's comfortable. So I mentioned that while I was walking down the corn road.
That's funny.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That'll be on my YouTube this Thursday night. I think it's posted 6:30 or 7 on Thursday.
Awesome.
I'll have to link that in there.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, John, I brought up a good question because you are the scent guy, so I'm curious, what do you do for your cell cams and your trail cameras to keep them scent free? I'm guessing you do some kind of scent regimen on those as well.
It's pretty simple. I just wipe them down with scent-free wipes. And then once I do that, when I do my speed tours and I'm putting out cameras, I'm totally clad in scent lock. So I've got my scent lock suit on, I've got my scent lock gloves on, I've got my rubber boots on. I've got a clean scent lock backpack, and then my cameras are in the backpack. And then before I put the cameras in the backpack, and the backpack is clean, obviously, I wipe them down with scent-free wipes, even the solar panels. So, and then I'm only handling them with my scent lock gloves. And then I usually don't put them at eye level. I also take a tethered one stick with two-step aiders on it. So I'm putting these cameras up about 12 to 14 feet and then pointing them down at a runway or some sort of a destination spot under an apple tree or under an oak tree, so that they're not in a peripheral vision where a buck can see them. You know, you don't get any of that deer looking at the camera kind of deal, because mature bucks in a state like Michigan or some public land where you guys are at, they'll spook them out. You know, a mature buck a lot of times won't come back to that location if he visually sees a camera. He'll come back, but it won't be during daylight hours unless he's with
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that for the deer. I actually do the same thing. I hang mine up with a stick, and I do it just because I got tired of cameras getting stolen.
Yep, I totally agree. And I think I mentioned that to you guys because on I only have 2 pieces of private with free permission, and I hunt with other guys on that as well. And on those I have cell cameras, but I will never put a cell camera on public because half of the time I'll lose 2 or 3 cameras this year. So the ones I have on public are all just, you got to check the SD cards.
Yeah, that's the way I am too.
Yeah, I do agree with hanging them up high. I love to do that. I climb with a one stick method, so I have it on me pretty much all the time anyways. So it's nice because it has that aider on it. I can put it up. I can get my feet to like 6-7 feet, hang that camera up. And then I have literally seen deer walk past. They never look at it. They never look at it. Now, where I was in a hurry this year and I hung one up about normal level, I just got a picture today. The deer's eyeball, it's licking my camera. The eyeball is right in my camera frame, and it's a cell cam too. And it's just staring right. I put it on a group of tree, like right up, almost hovering over top of a little creek drainage, like crossing. Yeah. And I never would have thought they walk right up and down that drainage constantly. And she came by and pretty much licked my camera this afternoon. So, but it seems that at least the does aren't getting spooked by it, but they know it's there. Yeah. I've had so many deer just stop and look at it, and you can see they're doing their head bob at it. I mean, they know it's there. Yep. But I hope it doesn't, cost me a deer down the line, because it could
Is it at a hunting location, or is it just on a transition?
It's not. It's on a transition just outside of my hunting location. So I put it there to just kind of see what's going through. It's a location I want to hunt, but I'm not sure what's going through there yet. So I kind of put it up to collect data.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, does are really curious. Bucks are not that curious. If they see something that looks out of place, they turn around and leave.
Yeah. Luckily, the only good buck I've had, he's been about 20 yards away, and he's crossed like they're supposed to, and he hasn't noticed it yet. So he's crossed about 3 times.
And I got to put a caveat on there, because what you're talking about and what I'm talking about is pressured areas. If you watch the TV guys, they can do anything they want on their ultra managed property. It doesn't matter. They could probably walk in a bedding area and put one over 10 yards from a deer's bed, and it wouldn't bother them. So, I mean, I'm being a little facetious here, but I'm just making a point that in pressured areas, things matter. Whereas in managed areas, you can get away with a lot of things. It doesn't make any difference, because the deer don't get shot at till they're 4 or 5 years old. So they're not that afraid of human intrusions or human odor.
Oh yeah. They don't get shot at here until they're like 4 or 5 months old.
Exactly. Spots are gone. They're in trouble.
I just got done hunting a little bit of public land up in our early season regulation area. Comes in 2 weeks before our regular season. So our statewide season opens up this Saturday, but our special regulation near Pittsburgh's been open for 2 weeks now. I'm sorry.
Oh,
And I was just down there last night, and I ended up actually harvesting 2 doe, which was pretty cool. But I'll tell you what,
nice.
just from the last time I was in there to this time, and then seeing some of the other people, what they do, I've become more consistently successful there on doe because that's what I'm targeting. Just staying away from the other people. I found a pocket where nobody goes, and I was talking to a kid in the parking lot last night about it, and I didn't tell him exactly where I was, of course. I mean,
Right.
we might have to get into etiquette a little later on
Yeah.
as we kind of preluded before we hit record. But, I kind of told him, I said, look, everybody parks here. They all walk this way. I said, that's why I go 100 yards this way, and I shoot deer all the time. I see deer all the time. I should say I don't shoot deer all the time, but the last couple of years I've been pretty successful down there.
Pretty
So
close to the parking area.
yeah, that's it. And I was walking out last night, right at dusk. Don't you know there was a deer about 20 yards from everyone's truck feeding, just standing right there.
Oh yeah, if you got the security cover and they're not molested, they'll bed wherever they're not molested. Absolutely.
Yep. Just a little 2-year-old doe.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that if you find those little pockets away from people in an pressured area, you're still going to have to do a lot of work to find the bucks. But man, you can definitely score on some does if that's all you want to do to fill the freezer.
Now, was that a spot where you can shoot a buck, but you had to shoot a doe first, or?
Not technically. It's unlimited doe type tags. You can buy as many as you want. That area, I think there's like 40,000 still remaining.
Yeah.
They probably put a limit of 60,000 for that area, and they never ever get bought out. You can shoot 1 buck in Pennsylvania no matter what, but the doe there are unlimited. So you don't have to like earn a buck or do anything like that for the special regs. They used to not have buck hunting down there. It was 2 weeks doe only. They just the last couple years opened it up where you can shoot a buck as well. And I'll tell you what, John, there's been some giants getting taken.
That early season, yeah, some giants.
Some private land down there where people are shooting some really big deer. It's impressive what you get around those city areas.
Oh, suburban stuff, yeah.
Suburban stuff, that's just as good as a Midwest farm in Iowa, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because there's no gun hunting there. It's archery only.
Yep.
For the most part,
Archery
so a lot of
only.
people buy. It's just hard to get access in areas like that.
Correct. Yeah. If you own the land though, and you have it, and you're the one that's hunting it by yourself, man, I've seen biggest deer in my life walking through a neighborhood feeding on shrubs on November 8th. Biggest buck I've ever seen in my life. Most rural neighborhood. The only biggest wood lot was like an acre. Crazy, man.
I can remember. I know Tom Nelson really good. He was host of American Archer for years. I think he still is actually. And he worked for Wolf Creek Productions. American Archer was with Wolf Creek Productions, and the owner of Wolf Creek Productions had a suburban TV show for a while. And I'm going back probably 15 years. And they, I think, leased 40 acres inside, just on the edge of the Columbus city limits, just outside Columbus city limits. And it was a farm. And they paid a lot of money for it, but they took 3 booners off that 40 acres the first year. Because they're pulling deer out of suburban, basically suburban Columbus, where there was no hunting. They're right on that end.
Yeah.
And in Ohio, you can bait. I mean, I've never hunted over baited food plots in my life, but in Ohio, you can bait.
Yeah.
3 booners on 40 acres.
You can. I couldn't imagine.
That is so wild, dude, man.
I mean, we have big pieces here. We have small pieces here. There ain't no booners.
I can relate. Michigan's in the same
very
boat.
few.
We got about 650,000 gun hunters and 340,000 bow hunters, and Michigan kills about 5 to 10 booners a year.
Yeah.
Everybody combined. I mean, that's like nothing. God, in Iowa, hell, just in one county, they'll kill 30 or 40 in a county.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of them around here too, and I think I saw half of them last Saturday. So it was
booners or hunters?
Hunters.
Hunters.
Yeah, wasn't booners.
Yeah,
but you take a state. Yeah, you take a state like Pennsylvania and our hunting numbers, and you say, hey, only this area you can hunt for 2 weeks, and you got all these Pennsylvania hunters itching to get out there, and you take these
because it's
oh,
before
by
the
the way,
regular season.
yeah, and this area has like 3 public lands that are pretty small, and everybody packs into them.
You blow right by where all the deer are up by the
Yeah, and they're sitting at their trucks by the time they get out. The deer are feeding at the trucks.
Oh my God. That
Pretty
is such an interesting story because I've had that happen to me many times. In fact, this one dude, he was going down to Illinois in public land, and he always applied. It was 16,000 acres, and everything prior to their gun season was an application. So you had to apply and get drawn for a November, like November 1 through 7, and then November 8 through 15. You had to get drawn.
Okay.
And he's always telling me he went 3 years in a row, he got drawn. And he was Panther Creek. That's the name of the public land. And he was saying, God, every year there's, a couple 180 inches get shot on this public land. And I'm saying, yeah, but that's 16,000 acres. And how many hundreds of hunters are out there? And so he said, well, there's a lot of hunters on it, but 180 inches plus every year. And I said, well, have you ever thought of going down there in December? Right, because in December, as soon as the gun season is over, you can go down there carte blanche. You don't have to get drawn or anything because you can go hunting. So I said, why don't you wait until you're going to get a good snowfall, keep an eye on your weather reports. And then if you see you're going to get a decent snow, call the park ranger, because these places in Illinois, this is actually a state park where campers and lakes and, during the summer, it's very active. And call the park ranger and see if they got the snow, and then go down there the very next day. That way you're looking at deer sign that's made 24 hours and deer on a bedding to feeding route at that time in December. And then you're scouting and you're looking at sign that was made within the last 24 hours. So you're looking at routine sign. And he ended up killing a big 8-point, literally 50 yards behind the ranger station. Like, nobody ever would have thought of hunting during November, right before there's snow on the ground. There's a huge runway skirting the backside of the ranger station because nobody ever thought of hunting that close to the ranger station. And he shot.
That is so funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a good tactic too. Like really thinking about it.
Yeah, we may have talked about that. I don't know how long ago that was. We may have talked about that on the last episode because when you bring that up, it reminds me of when I was in Illinois the second year I think I was ever in Illinois. I did the same thing. There was a giant, well, not a giant for here, giant, like 150-ish, 140-ish, right? Good, really good buck. Yeah, giant buck. We'll go with that. And the ranger was a good buddy of ours, and he kept telling him, he's bedding right behind the station where you can't hunt. It's a no hunting. He said he's there every single day, and everybody's after him. So I went 10 steps past the no hunting onto the hunting, and sure enough, he skirted right in that no hunting zone, right past me twice in the same trip in 1 week. He chased those into the no hunting, bred them in there, and then went around the backside onto private land. It was a routine.
He never stepped on the public side.
Nope. Never did it.
This guy might have been on the private too. I don't know, but I know he shot him.
Yeah.
It was right behind the ranger station, but he said there wasn't any sign. So
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm obviously probably not the same place, but it was funny. The same scenario. A little tiny bit of no hunting. All these acres were hunted, but that little tiny bit, and that's where that big buck was living, and that's how he got that big.
They know where they don't get.
Wow, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. Full circle though, back to this public land in 2B. Austin and I, like some of our earliest hunts together, I remember us using John Eberhart tactics. You remember?
Yeah, I do.
We went in deep. That's how we found this spot in all reality. I mean, that was the first steps to finding this doe killer spot, which I won't say, but yeah, 3 years ago, I almost shot a really big buck there. But we were in there, and I remember we were over top of acorns, right, and some really heavy, thick bedding. It didn't work out for us, but I'll tell you what, that was so much fun to put our John Eberhart, to work.
We learned a lot about that piece.
Curious, if you had acorns and bedding, what did not work out?
Well, we come to find out that whole place is bedding and acorns. So we just probably weren't on the acorns and thick cover. I mean, we thought we were in it, and it could have just been bad night, bad conditions. Maybe our wind was swirling a little bit too much. We were kind of caught in like a more or less like an opening in the area where I think our wind was just kind of doing one of these around and circle through there. And I'm guessing that's why we weren't successful that night. But man, it was that was fun.
Those early season hunts like that, we learned a lot, and we've continued to learn since then. But those were ones that I can remember being like really, really into, because we were trying to start new tactics and we were trying to learn and we were trying to just really get it done. And it was pretty wild.
It was the stepping stone moment though, to like going just past there a little bit farther and finding this spot and then finding the next, and then now to a point where we're pretty comfortable with where, what the deer are doing and trying to figure them out. And like I said,
oh, go ahead.
But I was going to say just that, 2 or 3 years ago, I was in there and I was about to climb my tree. And as I was hooking into it, about a 130 to 140 inch buck come, one of the first days of season comes trotting right past me at 30 yards. I never got a shot. It was too thick. But if I had been up my tree, I had a really good opportunity and I just literally buckled into it and he come through. So, but it almost worked,
I just posted on the YouTube video I posted last Friday, which is on right now, a scenario very similar to what you're talking about, where these guys I found tree stands on public land where they were set up in a sea of oaks. I mean, there's 20, 30 acres of oaks. And, when you're in something like that, where there's oaks everywhere, like you were just talking about, you don't have a destination location. You're just hoping of all these trees, they go by the one you're in.
Exactly.
So whenever I talk about hunting oaks or apple trees, I'm always talking about finding isolated white oaks or isolated apple trees, or, isolated sign where that is a destination spot. They don't have a sea of the same food that they, can go to at any time, where the odds of them coming by yours are pretty skinny.
Yeah.
Which it sounds like that's what you guys kind of ran into.
Yep. That's exactly it. And by the time we continue to push forward and found the other area, I've come to find, even we were talking on video chat the other day back and forth as I was heading to the property just yesterday, and I was asking him, there's some white oaks, I think real close to it. I'm going to kind of just scout my way in this time, because I was getting in the habit of just going to the same spot that we went last year and had success. Well, as I got in there, I was coming to find that the acorns weren't there. I mean, that was not the destination tree anymore. So I pushed closer to bedding, found the one that had acorns on it. And sure enough, I shot 2 doe under that tree, the same tree.
Right.
I mean, they were 8 steps apart from when I arrowed the first one and the second one.
I love it. Can I ask you, were the trees last year red oaks and the ones this year white oaks?
100%. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's the same. We're seeing the same thing.
Last year, red oak acorns were pretty prevalent. This year, reds don't have them where I'm at, and whites do. So
yeah, whites are really heavy this year. And for some reason, I feel like the whites are dropping exceptionally early this year. I feel like it was a month and a half ago. I feel like I was telling everybody that I know, I was like, dude, white oaks are dropping right now. My mom's driveway is covered in them.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally agreed. Yep. My 2 videos ago was about white oaks, and I was showing the white oak acorns up in the trees and my locations and entry and exit routes and stuff. So yeah, the white oaks and they prefer whites over reds if they have option.
Sure.
But yeah, that scenario you said, that's a perfect example where last year you could have went to that tree and just hunted because it was good last year without having the foresight to say, well, there's no acorns here, I got to look for a spot with acorns. Yeah.
Yep.
So you found a different destination spot.
Yeah. And it was only another 50 yards, 60 yards just past it, but that's
you'd have been just out of the game though.
I would have been just out of reach.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome.
So just pushing that much farther. Yeah. It was awesome. But I love it. It's that time of year, I'm getting all giddy.
That's so cool when you go in and you freelance and you find a tree and you jump up in it because it has all the destination stuff. Everything's right there. And I'm sure there was deer droppings on the ground and you tag out two does. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Appreciate it. definitely. I had a blast doing it too.
Yeah.
I ain't
Yeah.
gonna lie to you.
You got to drag them
really
out.
cool.
Of course, if you're close to the parking lot, you didn't have to drag them very far. And you're a big guy anyway.
Yeah, I did. I had to drag them both out. Yep, one at a time.
Yeah. The FedEx guy watched you do it.
Yeah. He did. He caught me. He dang near caught me loading them into my truck on the side of the road.
So you didn't have a package for him or anything? There you go.
No. It's funny because the house right there, he was literally delivering a package up to the house right on the edge of private and public. And I'm coming out right on the edge of private and public. And there he was. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's like 8:30 at night. What is he doing out here? I'm trying to be discreet. I don't want to give up my spot. I'm hiding behind bushes. I'm running through,
Ooh, you're learning good.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet, man.
That's right. No, it was really good, but man, I want to flip the script a little bit on you, John, and maybe we're going to run through this little we started kind of like I don't know. What are we calling those? Like series?
I don't want to call them. They're like a mini series. I would say something
Yeah.
similar to that.
We started a little Deer Slayer mini series last year where we bring in people on. We kind of have like they build their deer hunter resume, and it's taken a pretty big. We've had a lot of requests to bring it back, so I figure why not? We got Eberhart on.
We got requests for Eberhart,
right?
We got requests for Deer Slayer series.
Yeah, so we're gonna mix them together. So
Cool.
like it should be fun. Now, unfortunately, you pretty much answered about 90% of these, so this should be pretty quick. I'll skip the ones you've already touched on. But to begin the Deer Slayer series, you're from Michigan. You hunt Michigan. Okay, well, that's kind of the background that we've already started. We've already announced that you hunt all public land or free ask by permission land. So the public versus private talk, that's already been described as well. Can you describe a little bit of the terrain type that you hunt? Right there around Michigan, your bread and butter. What's your terrain?
Or what you prefer.
Yeah.
On the public lands that I hunt, almost everything is swamp. So almost everything on public land, I'm hunting during the rut phases, pre-rut and rut. I save my spots for that, but I'm typically back in the swamps where I postseason scouted them. I always 100% of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, not 100%. When I'm on public land, I have to use waders or hip boots or a canoe or a boat to access my spot. If I can walk standing up to a location in Michigan on public land, I don't care if there's 100 scrapes and 5,000 rubs. I won't hunt that spot because it's easy access and other hunters will mess it up. So there may be a lot of sign there, but if there's a mature buck using it during season, the sign that he's leaving is going to be done after dark. So to me, if it doesn't have the security cover requirements, I'm not going to set up on it. And it has to be back in an area where I've left most of my competition behind by carrying waders and crossing creeks and rivers or going through marshes and stuff like that to access. Because that's where they push the deer to. And those deer on public lands are usually pushed back into those areas way before season because everybody's in their preseason scouting and setting up, pre-season location prep. So those mature bucks that I'm trying to kill, they're already back in that jump before season even opens. So that's where I have to hunt on public land. It's relatively flat. Michigan's a relatively flat state until you get up into northern Michigan. And then when I'm hunting private, I've got one private spot in central Michigan, and it's relatively flat and it's ag. It's primarily ag. I'd say 80% of it's ag, and the rest has got a little swamp, got a little bit of timber. It's got some funnels, pinched funnels between two crop fields. It's got a cattail marsh on it. And then the one in southern Michigan, which is 2.5 hours from my house, that is, he owns, I think, about 100 acres, but he only lets me hunt in the swamp. I'm the only hunter. He's got like 6 guys that hunt on his property, but it's very sparingly. They don't hunt there a lot. And he lets me hunt in the swamp. I'm the only hunter he lets go in the swamp because of my scent control. He knows I can go in the swamp and hunt on an all-day sit in the swamp with a very early before daylight entry and an after dark exit without spooking deer. because when you're in a bedding area, which that is, you're always during the course of the day going to have deer downwind. So he knows they're not going to wind me and spook and become more nocturnal than they already are. So pretty much everything I do is heavy security cover oriented, where I either have to go beyond the heavy security cover, beyond the river, beyond the creek, through some security cover, and then there may be a little bit of open timber back in this past the security cover where I could hunt. Let's say there's an oak tree, or like you were talking about, an oak tree back in the bedding area after I've already crossed a river or a creek or something, and then I'll set up at that, because that's going to be a destination location in the bedding area, if you follow what I'm saying.
Definitely.
So I'm going in anytime I'm hunting in those bedding areas. It's going to be, not always, but 90% of the time, it's going to be during pre-rut or during peak rut prior to November 15th, which is our gun opener. I'm going to be in my tree a minimum of an hour and a half before daylight and settled in. And I'm not going to leave until a half an hour after dark, because I want to be in there before the deer transitions into the bedding area. And I don't want to leave until about a half hour after dark, where deer have gotten up and left the bedding area. So I'm not spooking anything with my entries and exits. Because anytime you're hunting in bedding areas, you have to commit during rut phases to an all day sit, in my opinion. Because otherwise, after a morning hunt, you'd spook deer with your exit, or during an evening hunt, you'd spook deer in the bedding area with your entry. So now early season, like this next week, because our season opens October 1, this Saturday, everything is going to be food-based, natural feeding location oriented. So I've got cameras at 3 apple trees. I've got about 40 to 50 locations prepped every year before season. I'll probably hunt 10 to 15 of them max, because based on food production, does the trees have acorns? Do the apple trees have apples? Or the scrape areas that I set up on during postseason active? Because that changes due to crop rotations and mast and fruit production. So early season, everything is at food-based, natural food-based locations. So oaks along the edge of, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, standing corn, or an apple tree along the edge, or just 40, 50 yards inside the timber from a standing cornfield, or possibly find a primary scrape area along a standing cornfield. As soon as the corn is picked, those locations are worthless to me, because the bucks I want to kill, if it's an oak tree on the edge of a standing cornfield, he's not going to come to that spot during daylight hours once the corn's picked, because he's too vulnerable. It's too open on the one side.
Yeah.
So
that was a terrific answer.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to pick that apart a little bit too, because as you were kind of talking, I was coming up with questions and jotting those down. So when you're going back in, your core area where you hunt with the swamps and the marshes, and you're kind of back in there, are you seeing a lot of sign being laid down by mature bucks in those small areas? Or is it more that those are like their bedding home, where they're bedding in there, they own it, they don't have to lay a whole lot of sign down in there? Or are you seeing a lot of sign, like rubs, scrapes, that kind of thing?
You rarely see scrapes in bedding areas, because back in the bedding areas I'm talking about, it's pretty low ground. A lot of times it's marshy, and they never lay scrapes in the muddy areas. And typically when you see scrape areas, it's always going to be where there's doe activity. So most scrape areas are going to be based around feeding locations. That's why you'll see scrapes if you got an apple tree or an oak tree dropping acorns, and there's only, let's say there's 2 oak trees along a quarter-mile edge of standing corn, and they're dropping acorns. Odds are really good that there's going to be scrapes prior to October 1 at one of those 2 oaks. Or if there's an apple tree just inside the edge of a standing cornfield and it's dropping apples, because there's doe activity, odds are it's going to have scrapes there. So primary scrape areas are 100% based around doe activity. So when bucks get back into the swamps, does don't want to bed around bucks. They will keep their distance from bucks because the bucks bother them. If you know what I'm saying. They chase them and they pester them, especially the subordinate bucks. So they keep their distance from the bucks. So the bucks have no reason to lay scrapes down back in the swamps. Now, do they rub back in the swamps? Absolutely. If you see tag alders and red brush, little pine trees, they're going to be trashed out. But do I go back in there looking for sign? No, I do not. I go
Right.
back in during postseason into the swamps, and I look for the most runway signs, where there's a lot of runways. And I pick a tree in the middle of that is where I can cover as much of those runways as possible. And that's one thing about hunting in a swamp. Scent control is very critical because 50% of the deer you see over a period of time are going to be downwind of you. Because there's no rhyme or reason. They're just chasing does. During the peak rut, they're actually in the bedding areas pushing does. They'll breed them and then they'll lay down with them for 20 minutes. They'll get up and breed them again, and the doe will run 40 or 50 yards before he lets the buck back on him to breed her again. So they're just moving around in there a lot. And there's no rhyme or reason to anything. They're not following any routine. He's just keeping her confined in the bedding area and doing during her estrus cycle. So, 50% of deer are going to be downwind. So scent control is a big, big deal when you're hunting the interior of the swamp.
Makes a ton of sense.
It's not as big as along the edge. It's not as big of a deal because you can actually pay attention to the wind. Because I paid attention to the wind for 35 years, and then the last 20 I haven't. But I don't remember the question. Did I answer it?
You did, but
did.
I'm going to follow up on it because
Yeah.
you bring up you just transition perfect into my next question. I know, you are well known for hunting high, way up there sometimes, but in a swamp, I know even our swamps that we hunt, a lot of those trees you get, one, they're not straight trees. They're real wonky trees. They're crazy trees. You may not be able to get high into a lot of them. Does that affect how you climb the trees in the swamp? Or are you still finding trees you can get kind of high up in? Or are you just taking what you can get the best cover possible, and you're setting up to shoot that spot?
If there's a really good spot and there is not an adequate tree and there's not an adequate place where I can hunt from the ground because there's just too much brush too high,
Mm-hmm.
I won't hunt that. I'll try
Okay.
to find a place where there's a tree, because if there's a tree and I can only get up at 18 feet and it's a solo tree, which in swamps you see that a lot, dead
Oh, yeah.
tree. There's a tree here and there's a tree over there. I mean, your odds in Michigan or in PA on public land of getting in a tree 18 feet off the ground that's this big around and not getting picked is pretty close to zero. You're gonna get picked as soon as
Definitely.
you make a movement. So I don't want to waste my time. I would rather go find a huntable tree where I've got some security cover up there. They can hide behind the tree. I can move around the tree. So there are times I wish trees were in specific spots, but they're not. And I've shot deer many times on the ground where I've actually built a ground blind out of natural deadfalls, or built a ground blind in cattails, made bee lanes. I always would make a bee, like if I'm in a cattails here, and let's say there's runway 15 yards away and it's just being beat to death, I'll always make bee runways. So I've got a visual runway and a shooting runway, because if you only have one runway or one shooting lane to a runway, the odds of a deer going into that runway and you picking up your bow and drawing it and getting a shot before he goes through your lane are not very, the odds of that happening are really high. So you always have to have a visual lane, and then you prep and get your bow up when he goes through that and get ready to shoot him in the second lane. So when I'm hunting on the ground, I always make V routes. So I've got a visual and then a shooting lane. But typically I love being in trees. A lot of people say, well, you hunt so high in trees that the sun's not a big deal. That's BS, because I've hunted high, not on pot, but I've hunted high in trees for a lot of years. and I used to get winded all the time before I had it set.
Yeah.
That's because it's from all the pot. That's why you're getting winded.
There you go. And there's been a lot of times in trees, like if there's a spruce tree or a pine tree in a swamp, which is not that uncommon, they do happen. I've shot deer in swamps and I'm only 12 feet off the ground, and I've shot them at 6 yards. So
feel invisible in those things, man.
So the scent control has to be perfect. Yeah. I mean, and when you're in a tree that high off the ground, I was set up. I didn't cut a whole big ring in the tree for a saddle where I could go around the tree 360. I just cut cut the tree on opening because I was shooting at one specific route, one specific runway. So that's the only runway I was worried about. So I'm just setting up and I just cut a little section out of the tree, so I can have a shooting hole. And it was on public. And yes, I do occasionally cut stuff on public land.
It was probably already dead anyways.
It was probably already dead.
It was dead. It fell off that tree. I know how that works. They fall off all the time around here.
Yeah. Well, typically I'm so far back in, I am not even concerned about somebody coming back and plant.
Yeah.
I mean, in all reality, some of those, like not being able to use spurs and different things, the different regulations we have, they really just don't make much sense. But I understand it because there's a lot of people out there that would be out there with chainsaws if you let them, they'd be cutting 10 feet wide lanes, 100 feet long, or 100 yards long. And that would be, then they'd build a shack on it and that would be their rifle stand, right? That would happen.
And I have talked to DNR officers and typically they have told me, if we see somebody and they cut a little thin shooting lane or they cut a couple branches out of a tree, they don't do anything. But the law has to be there in case somebody does something and it's severe, they can do something about it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. 100%. That was excellent. So that definitely plays into the same place when we, hunt swamps and whatnot. Now, the interesting part is, and I know we've talked about this before on a prior podcast, and I've heard you talk about a lot. You're in early and you're out late. Both of those equate to you moving in the dark and navigating a swamp. I want to know how you make that possible, because I know just from the one moment when this guy shot a buck and it ran so deep into that damn swamp that navigating out of there that night was a nightmare.
It was
a nightmare.
John, this guy came and helped me. It was probably like 8 o'clock. We got back to the truck with the deer. It was like 1:30 in the morning.
I marked my lanes.
It was terrible.
I have a YouTube video probably 3 or 4 ago on marking routes. And then I have a YouTube video the week prior to the marking routes of using headlamps versus flashlights, because I think that's a big deal. So many people use headlamps that are 400 or 500 lumens and they spook the hell out of deer. So I always mark my routes back into the swamps. And usually when I'm in there postseason scouting and I'm prepping a location, that's when I mark my routes. And I will cut routes. I will actually cut routes with my saw. And many times cutting an entry and an exit route back into the swamp takes way longer than prepping the tree. I mean, there's a lot of work involved in doing that stuff,
No doubt.
This video that's coming out this Thursday, I'm mentioning that as well. I'm showing markers, how far they reflect after dark versus using onyx. Because with onyx, you can't follow a trail with an onyx in the dark. If it's going through heavy vegetation, it's just not that accurate. You get a few feet off of your entry route, then you're going probably stepping over logs and breaking more branches and making more noise. And you're getting anxious. And so you're overheating. When you got markers, you're physically following a very defined route. And if I want to, and this will be in the video as well, if I need to make a right-hand turn, let's say I'm going straight through a swamp and I'm not using tacks, because in a swamp, you can't stick tacks in vegetation. You have to use those bread tie markers. Yeah. So I use bread ties a lot, and you have to cut the vegetation way back around it if you're doing it during postseason, because the stuff's going to grow. Usually I'm putting it on brush and stuff. But anyway, when I'm coming into those areas in the dark, if I have to take, let's say I'm going a straight line for 4 tacks or for 4 bread markers, and then I need to take a 45 degree to the right. I'll take somehow or another, I'll find something where I can actually put an orange marker. If I'm using tacks on trees, I'll put a white tack or a brown tack, and then I'll put an orange tack 45 degrees up above it to the right. That lets me know if my brown tacks or my white tacks are my main tacks. As soon as I see that orange marker 45 degrees, I know I got to make a 45-degree turn. So, my routes are always marked. And when I kill a deer and it goes and it dies back in a swamp, runs, let's say 100 yards back in an area where I don't have it marked. I'm just blood trailing a deer. What I will do is I'll mark it on my Onyx, but then I always carry reflective markers in my backpack. I'll put reflective markers all around the area. So when I'm coming back in the dark, it's just real easy with a flashlight. When you get close, you can find the exact location where the deer's at.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We've used tacks plenty. Sometimes I'm afraid to use them because someone else will find them and take them back to my spot and end up, hunting in your spot.
If you buy HME brown tacks, it's in the video coming out this Thursday. If you buy the HME brown tacks, I guarantee you put that in a tree, you can't see it at 15 yards. You
Good.
literally
Yeah,
can't.
I might
Now,
have
if you
to.
use a white tack, you'll see it visually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But at night, you can see the brown reflection of the tack. But in the daytime, you cannot see that brown tack. I have that as visual.
Yeah, there's a lot of spots where I've tacked them before, and in the daylight, I come back in there, the next morning before dark or whatever it is, the next time I'm in there in dark and you turn that light on and you're basically at the airport. There are so many tacks.
There's
so many directions. Yeah. You're like, okay, which tacks look the newest? Those are probably mine.
I never use white tacks on public land ever, or orange orange flagging tape or orange stick-on markers. Everything on public land is either green or brown. They don't make the green tacks anymore, but Ameristep used to make a green reflective tack, and I've got several thousand of them. When they went out of business, I bought a lot. I got a lot of everything. If I use something, I probably reflective marked 500 to 1,000 entry and exit routes in my life. So I use that stuff a lot.
I think it's funny. The last time we had you on, saddle hunting was starting to become like a little bit more of a resurgence again.
Sure.
And, Tethered was coming out and you had all these other manufacturers starting to come out. And me and Charles had been talking about it for a while. I was still very, very married to a lightweight stand and sticks.
Yep.
And it's right after we talked and we had a conversation for hours last time. I made a saddle.
Oh, wow.
And that year I killed my first buck out of the saddle, which was awesome. And then Charles, he was trying to talk me into it. I just kind of came out of nowhere and made the saddle, and then boom, there it was. And now we're both like deep.
Oh yeah. I'll never go anything else.
No
I was
way.
just talking to a kid today about it. He was saying that, he was interested in it and he wanted to do it, and, kind of what my thoughts were. I said, well, been doing it for 4 or 5 years now, and I don't see myself ever going back away from saddle hunting. I mean, the benefits of it are just unbelievable. Same as you're saying about the benefits of scent lock and using it properly and not worrying about the wind. Just as much being mobile and being able to get yourself in the right spot and put yourself in the area for success with a saddle. It plays hand in hand, with overall success. I think you'd agree, like you said, your numbers speak for themselves with how many bucks you've killed out of a saddle. It's just incredible.
Those were the two biggest things that have changed my kill percentages. Was initially going into a saddle in 1981 and then scent lock in 1997. Those were the two biggest game changers, hands down. The saddle has so many advantages over any kind of a metal stand that it's doing it an injustice even to mention the two in the same sentence, in my opinion. And I'm kind of impressed that he made his own saddle and shot a deer on it. That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, he did. He manufactured his own saddle, shot a deer out of it. A week later, gave it to me. I wore it for the first time being in a saddle, hunted out of it for about 10 days. I went to Ohio with it, stole it from him there, and I could have shot a bunch of deer, but I was just after a buck, and I didn't see one of the ones I was after. So more or less, I just decided to pass on some deer and to be able to just swing around the tree and let them walk right past you. Like, that was the most amazing thing to me, like the light bulb moment. But man, this is not only really cool. Wow, the tactic is super, super useful.
Yeah, it's really kind of cool because I can remember when I first got into it, I was hunting out of a tree sling. That was the first one. And then Trophy Line came out in either the late 90s, late 1990s or early 2000s. And I designed a saddle for them. It was called the Ambush saddle, which was a mesh saddle. I didn't use it. I'm a 2-panel saddle guy. I have my own signature saddle out there through Tethered. But, that was their number one selling saddle. And then Trophy Line went out of business. And then they finally came back. But before they came back, Tethered kind of took over the reins in 2018 and brought the saddle hunting thing back into fruition because they have great marketing on social media. And now there's lots of great companies out there. You got Cruiser, and you got Trophy Lines back, and you got Latitude, and you got Tethered, and you mentioned another one. I mean, there's quite a few really good saddles out there, and it's personal. It's kind of like a bow, whatever fits you the best. So there's lots of options. It's a growing category for sure.
Yep, without a doubt. And what's nice about that is the different amount of options bring, prices down and opens up the market to more people, gets more people involved, allows more people to enjoy what we've been, enjoying, and to get that benefit. And I've pretty much have brought a bunch of people to the dark side. So,
oh yeah,
it's multiple year now, more and more just once they put it on, they see the benefits of it. They go, wow, this is actually really comfortable. It's, I could see why you've been hunting out of this thing. The lightweight, I mean, my goodness, like you said, don't even mention that giant piece of metal that they clank through the woods all the time. We still got a couple friends that do it.
Yeah, but they're on the cusp, and I don't know, man. I feel like I'm counting on my toes now how many we got going on.
Oh my goodness. It's like I said, one after another.
I was just out doing my speed tours and put out a bunch of cell cameras. Like I mentioned to you guys before we started, I've got about 15 cameras out, and probably 10 of them are cell cams or Exodus cameras, which are phenomenal cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in locations, and I was doing videos while I was putting out the cameras and doing these speed tours. And it was kind of interesting because on a couple of my locations, they're where oak trees, white oaks this year seem to have acorns, reds don't. And so these were where white oaks were budding up next to standing corn. So I did a video where I'm actually, because a lot of people, when they walk to a tree that's on a tree line, they usually walk down the edge of the field. In other words, they would literally walk down the edge of the standing corn where you got timber to one side, standing corn to the other. Well, I was doing my video with my entry, because that entry and exit YouTube video is posting this Thursday that I did. And basically, when I don't ever walk down the edge of the field when it's standing corn, or even if I've got a place, let's say a tree that's 100 yards into the timber off of a hay field or an alfalfa field or a bean field, I never walk the field edge, because there's typically does or subordinate bucks or something bedding along the edges. And when you walk the field edge, you spook deer. And when they run back into the bedding area, back where you're going to be in their hunting back on the edge, they spook other deer. And especially a mature buck, if he sees deer spooking going by him, he's not going to get up and come that direction before dark.
No.
He knows they just spook from there. So on this video, I show actually walking way out into the field, or walking about 10 rows into the corn, where I'm going parallel with the tree line, but I'm 10 rows into the corn for my entry. And then I can still see the trees over to the side. And when I get to the spot where I need to cut to that tree or go in the woods, that's when I cut back to the corn and go straight to the tree or straight into the woods. I'm not spooking anything walking down the edge. I'll tell you what, marking entry and exit routes is a big deal. It's a big deal. The type of headlamps you use is a big deal. When I'm on public lands, and especially during the pre-rut and rut phases, I'm way back in. Okay. So I've crossed a river, I've crossed a creek, I've used a canoe, but still, when the foliage is down during the rut phases, I can see for a mile. If somebody parks a mile away and they get out with these big, huge headlamps, man, I can see that thing shining all over, because your head's always turning, you're looking down. I use a AAA flashlight to find my way into my entries. And I've had deer many, many, many times where people, I can see their headlamps a half a mile away, and they either park their car and I can see them coming in. And even though they're not coming back to where I'm at because they don't have the stuff to cross the river, they're spooking deer across the river and they're running by me. And the guys that are coming in with those headlamps, they don't even know it. Those deer see those bright headlamps. And anybody that says they don't doesn't know what they're talking about. And I watched all the TV guys, almost everybody on YouTube uses headlamps. And you're spooking deer with your entries without even knowing it. I feel like I'm preaching.
I definitely use that. No.
Good.
It's good. I definitely use a headlamp. I don't know if it makes a difference or not. My headlamp has a green mode.
Yeah.
And I use the green mode. It's really dim. I can see what I'm doing. If I need that light when I'm hanging, my sticks and stuff in the dark, it's perfectly fine. But it is really dim, and that's all I use. I mean, the only time that my actual headlamp light comes on is when I'm tracking a deer.
Yes, that's fine, because if you're using a green or a red lens, that cuts down on the lumens big time. I mean, you still have a beam. You still have a beam and a bright spot, and deer tend to be colorblind. So if you took something red and put it in a tree, they might not see that, but still with a red light, there is an actual beam, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, as soon as you put any color over top of a white light, you're cutting the lumens down big time. And that's what you got. You got to cut those lumens down.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think another point that you mentioned that was a very good tactic is marking your way out is somewhat underrated. Everybody typically marks their way in, but they don't mark their way out. And I'm guilty for it myself. I won't lie to you, because I'm typically sneaking in, but then, on the way out, I'm like, I believe this is the way. And then I kind of turn around and look back to make sure my tacks are still there to see if I'm going the right direction. And when they're not, panic mode might set in every once in a while. The phone comes out. Where am I?
Onyx.
Yep.
Well, I always mark my exit routes, and it's very, very common for me to have a different entry route than an exit route. Because if I'm going to hunt, let's say I'm going to hunt 100 yards inside of a timber line from a crop field. Okay. I'm going to walk on an evening hunt. I'm going to walk at least 100 to 200 yards out into the crop field. If it's a short crop field, I'm going to walk way away from the tree line, and I'm going to cut in directly to the tree and then go into the timber where I need to go. But I'm not going to exit out through that open area, because there's likely going to be deer out there feeding. So I'm going to my exit route is going to be back through the timber, back to my vehicle. So I'm going to exit a half an hour after dark, where the deer have came out into the crop field. And now I'm going through the timber where they're not, but yet I enter through the crop field where they're not on my evening entry to my tree. So it's very common for me to have a different entry than exit.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that nobody really thinks about. I know I'm guilty of coming in and out the same way. Typically my access is pretty clean, but there are always those times where your access is clean, but your entry or your exit isn't, even if it is the same route. Perfect example right there. Your access and exit might be totally different. And that's something people overlook all the time, and that's something I'm going to actually look into moving forward.
You always want to enter or exit where you have the least possibility of spooking a deer.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like you come to the end of their hunt and you're just like, you know what? I didn't kill anything. I'm just going to get the heck out of here as quickly as possible, right? That's what people want. Straight out of here. I'm going to run out of here. I'm going to spook every deer out of the property. And I don't care, because I'm not hunting. It's dark, blah, blah, blah. And I'll tell you what, you do that enough times, you see a lot less deer the next several times you're in that area.
100%. 100%. Yep. No doubt about it.
We're just going to have to get a mud boat or something for the one property, because there's pretty much only one way in and out.
There is pretty much only one way in and out if you want to get through there.
Unless we go swimming or snorkel gear or something.
Yeah.
And that's just one single property where it's like we do the best we can. We sneak out the best we can, do minimal damage. but you know, you're
Trying to only hunt it on the right
Yeah.
when it's right. I mean,
Right.
it's just if the wind's bad in there, it's like you were saying. I mean, in a swamp, the wind can be pretty
big
gnarly.
time. Yeah.
And if your scent control regimen isn't 100% on point, they're gonna get your win.
Mhm.
So we really try and be exceptionally low impact on those spots, and it's just sometimes it's really hard. I mean, you might get in really clean with your access, but your exit just might be
Yeah,
bad.
swamps, because they're flat, but there's trees in there, and wind hits trees, and it diffracts off trees, and so you get swirls and stuff. Yeah, swamps are a bitch, and saddles are a bitch. Or sides of ridges where you're dealing with thermals and swirling winds.
Yep.
Back before I was really proficient with Sunlock, back in the mid '80s, I just totally quit hunting in saddles, or in like saddles between hills or on sides of ridges, because I would almost always get busted. So I just totally quit hunting those types of areas. Even though there might have been great sign there, the wind changes every 10 minutes. So
Yep.
there was no reason for me to even set up there. Probably spook a deer I want to kill. I was hoping I could kill him maybe someplace else. And there was times when I had to pay attention to the wind, where I didn't have the days off work during the rut phases, where the wind was right for me to hunt my best rut phase location. So I never got to hunt them. That happens to everybody. If you have to play the wind, there's lots of times you just can't hunt your best spots because the wind's not right during the days you have off work. So
Yeah.
hating the wind is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
100%. So I think I'm going to know the answer to these, but if you were to continue to build that resume, your hunting resume, John, and we got to the point where you're putting your strengths, right? Like any good resume, you have that. Where's your strengths? What makes you best for the job? If you're going to use the same definition and take that into the hunting world, what would you say maybe 2 or 3 points are like your strongest point of what makes you a successful hunter?
Just like work, it's my work ethic. I've hunted with quite a few pretty decent, what I thought was pretty decent bow hunters. And none of them had the same work ethic as I do. When people have hunted with me, they call me a deer Nazi because I'm a prick when I'm hunting, because I expect everything to be just regimented, just right, and they can't usually follow that procedure. They're just not regimented, the type of regimented people to do that. So I'm a prick to deer hunt, and I usually hunt by myself because of that, because I don't want other people messing up my stuff. My strengths are I'm not afraid to go back into the junk. Everything is security cover oriented. My strength is also I know the seasonal and daily timing for every single location I prep. A lot of people just prep locations and then they carte blanche hunt them. So you may have a location that's beautiful for an evening sit, and you go in there in the morning and spook deer feeding at that spot with your morning entry and screw that up for evenings. So I know the daily timing to hunt every location that I prep, and I know the seasonal timing. Some locations are early season locations, and they're worthless once the rut phases roll around because the apples are gone, or the acorns are gone, or the corn is picked, and so those trees along that edge are no longer any good because there's no security cover to security cover. So my seasonal timing and my daily timing is very, very good. I don't think a lot of people pay attention to that. Anytime you have multiple locations, you should know this location's best hunted during the pre-rut or during early season, or it's strictly a morning spot, or it's strictly an evening spot, or because it's back in a bedding area, it's strictly an all-day sit spot during the rut phases. Knowing when and where to hunt what is a big, big deal. I'm really good at that. And I'm really good at prepping locations. When I take my kids out of state, I prep all of our locations. I don't trust them to do it, even though they're really good hunters. And I just we all hunt out of a saddle, and I want to prep everything. I want to know that the steps are around the tree correctly. So, when I'm moving around the tree, I don't have to look down and see my steps when I'm moving around the tree. I don't know. And I'm just disciplined. I'm disciplined. I can remember when I first took one of my boys out to Kansas, and I said, I'm leaving the house. I rent a house. So I said, I'm leaving at 5 minutes to 5. And I said, and if you're not ready, I'm leaving. And he got up and he was drinking coffee, and he smoked at the time. He doesn't smoke now. and he wasn't ready, and I just freaking left. I mean, I'm a prick when I'm hunting with people. And people, you know, and I'm also, the scent control thing is a big deal, because I won't go hunting with anybody if they don't have a good scent control regimen, because I don't want them screwing up the area. Obviously, on public land, you're going to have people screwing shit up. That's why I go way back in where the deer typically have been pushed to. And I'm, you know, and I have a good scent control regimen, but I would never take somebody without a good scent control regimen back into those areas, because they'd screw up the whole place.
I like it. No, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what I really loved about that is that you really like bought in and answered it almost like a interview question, right? Like it was a true resume. Like I love that.
Yeah.
The way you dug in. You can truly tell the passion and, you know, what really makes you tick, what makes you successful. I mean, obviously your numbers speak for themselves. Everything you've done and everything you've taught other people. I'm sure there's a million success stories out there of people that said, I heard Eberhart say this and I did it and I killed a dear.
Yeah.
You know, but
well, I get that a lot. I get that a lot, and I'm proud of that. That makes me feel so good when somebody else gets it done with supposedly my methods. But you know what?
Yeah.
I can only put information out there. The person listening to what I'm trying to possibly teach them has to have a similar work ethic to put it into place and make it work. And
yeah.
I know lots of hunters that have done that. They're really good hunters that don't pay attention to wind. You know, they know the seasonal daily timing for all of their locations, and I love it. I absolutely love that. You know, I can help people be like that. But you have to be a detail-oriented guy to do it. I'm a very detail-oriented guy to do it. And if you're not detail-oriented, there's a lot of things I do that you just physically couldn't do. And I can usually tell by looking at somebody's vehicle, or the way they're dressed, or the way they speak, or the way they hang around at a campfire, if they're detail oriented. I mean, I've been a sales rep all my life, and you know, you just learn to read people.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that? I told that story earlier, how Austin and I, we tried the Eberhart tactics and we weren't successful that one time, right? But what's beautiful about that is we continue to use and continue to learn in that area to become successful. Like you said, you can only teach them so much. You can only give so much advice. If you're going to just try it one time in the deer world, like you're talking about hunting an animal that is unpredictable. Yes, and it doesn't work. If you're going to give up after one try because it didn't work, you're never going to be as successful as you would like to be, because you have to continue to have a little bit of grit, a little bit of work ethic, like you mentioned, a little bit of discipline to continue to do those things, put yourselves in the best case scenario. It's like playing blackjack, right? You can play by the house rules to better your odds and make the same call every single time. Sometimes you're going to lose money. Sometimes you're going to make money. It's the same way in the whitetail world.
Yep. I've got something I could interject to that would fit perfectly. When I look at my stats from November 1 through November 14th, because our gun season opens November 15th, in those 14-day period, I've killed 20 book bucks in Michigan. So of those 20 book bucks that I shot in Michigan during that 14-day period, 7 of them were shot between 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's 35%. 35% of the bucks were shot in the middle of the day. Less than 8% of my time spent on stand during those 14 days over those years was between 11 and 3. So I killed 35% of the bucks during that time frame in 8% of my sits on, as far as time spent on stand. Because most of the times I'm just going out and I'm hunting a morning hunt or an evening sit. So to tell people, you know, like to try all day sits are a pain. I mean, you're sitting there, you're changing your clothes 3 or 4 times during the course of the day. You got your clothes on early in the morning, and then you take still clothes off as it's getting warmer in the middle of the day, and you put it back on as it gets colder in the evenings. And in the sun, you know, if it's a sunny day in the middle of the day, it just beats you to death. and to try and stay attentive during a full day sit, it's a pain. So it's very easy for somebody to say, well, John does this, or Dan Infalt does this, or this guy does this, and I'm going to try it. And you try it once or twice and it doesn't work and you give up on it. That's ridiculous. You've got to stay regimented on things that are going to work, and they will work for you at some point. You just have to stick with it. Because I've done that with guys on that midday period. This one dude, he bought one of my books, and I'm working an in-store, which is basically I'm in a store on a Saturday, helping them sell stuff. And this was prior to deer season. And this dude comes in and he's looking at a lot of clothes, and I'm talking to him, and he said, yeah, I killed 2 bucks last year. And he did not know who I was. He had no clue who I was. He said, I bought this damn book. It's called Bow Hunting Pressured Whitetails, and it's talking about hunting during the middle of the day. He said, so this guy owned his own private property. So he said, I've got this bedding area back in the middle of my property. It's 7 acres. So I went back there and I got in a tree in the morning, because he said, the guy said to sit all day, and I'm sitting in this spot and it's like noon, and I called my buddy. I texted my buddy and I said, this is BS. I'm not seeing anything. This is the first time he's sat all day. Very first time he's ever done it. He said, this is BS. I'm going to sit until 1 o'clock and then I'm leaving, because he's bored, because you don't see a lot of deer in the middle of the day. And at 12:30, and I forgot this part. He had 7 bucks on his property, and 2 of them were pretty decent. So it's like 12:30, and he texts his buddy and he says, I think I'm going to just leave early. I'm going to leave. And he said, I think I'll sit maybe 10 more minutes. So as soon as he put his phone in his pocket, which I don't believe in texting, I stand, all of a sudden one of those small bucks come by. And this is this guy's property. So he's seen all 7 of these bucks. He saw one of those smaller bucks come by. And it was followed by another. And then it was followed by another one. And finally, the 5th one came by, and they're getting bigger each time. They're kind of coming down this route through this swamp in their pecking order. And he ended up shooting the 6th one, because it was like a 130, which for Michigan is a ultra booner. And he shot that buck, and then that deer took off running, and he's got a little pond back in this bedding. So he gut shot it. So he called his buddy, said, I can't believe it. I shot this buck. I shot one of those 2 big bucks. And so they got the book, and I've got a chapter in there on recovering whitetail deer, bow shot deer. And it says if there's a gut shot deer, they will try to lay in water because it soothes the wound. The cold water soothes the wound. Well, they ended up finding that buck in the pond. It died in the pond. So they got that out. He went back the next day and he shot the other bigger buck, which was the 7th big buck. He shot both of them in the middle of the day, gut shot both of them. They both died in the pond. And after he was all done, because I knew I knew it was my book he was talking about. I said, I wrote that book. He said, yeah, right. And I said, I wrote that book. I am John Eberhart. And he looked at me, and then because I got my picture in there with a lot of deer, and he was a big guy like you guys. He just grabbed me, and he owned a funeral home in Hastings, Michigan, and he hugged me. I thought he was going to squeeze the life out of me, but I mean, it was such an exhilarating feeling for me to sit there and listen to this guy's story, knowing it was influenced by me, and then telling him at the end it was awesome. 2 days in a row, 2 biggest bucks on his property, both about 1 o'clock in the morning. Quarter to
That
I thought that was just really cool.
that is unreal, man. That is so funny.
That's beautiful. I mean, that you're talking about just an amazing story of gratification where you knew the whole time he was talking about your book, and all of a sudden it's like that could have, first off, it could have went one way or the other, right? As I'm sure as he's telling that story, you're sitting there thinking, I'm either going to tell him I wrote that book or I'm not at the end of this story.
But at the end, when he recovered both deer, I thought that was cool. And it wasn't about me. It was just listening to the excitement level in his
Absolutely.
voice and telling me I thought this was bullshit, sitting there in the middle of the day and it's hot out and I got shit to do at home, the whole dig. And he stayed there, and he got it done. And that he was so excited, and that just made my day. It was just awesome.
Absolutely. That was excellent, John. Excellent.
That's tremendous.
Well, Austin, that's pretty much it for the deer slayer portion. I know we're running up on time as well. But did you want to bring anything else in? I know you had a couple more points you wanted to touch on.
I kind of wanted to touch on that, the public land etiquette thing, but I don't know if we need to. This has been so good so far that
Don't bring it down now. Huh?
I don't know if I want to bring it down with that. You know what I mean?
Well, in my opinion, there's guys that hunt public land that do have some etiquette, but for the most part, they don't, because there's just so many of them. Most of the public lands where I'm hunting, there's 40 bow hunters in a section. I'm not saying they're there every day, 40 people in a 640 acre section, every 640 acres, but there's 40, 50 people that hunt it during the course of the year. And, intrusions are to be expected.
For sure.
That's why you got to go back where other people are not. Because if you're hunting in the same areas as everybody else and you're hunting similar to everybody else, there's no reason for you to expect different results than anybody else. You've got to do things outside of the norm. To be successful at bow hunting and try and target mature bucks, you have to do things outside of the norm. And the more heavily pressured the area you live in and hunt in is, the more you have to do things outside of the norm. Because if you're hunting managed property, you're going to kill your big bucks no matter what the hell you do. For the most part, you're going to get them in. But when you're hunting heavily pressured property, you may slop a good buck in every 15 or 20 years just out of happenstance. But to do it on a consistent basis, you have to do things different than everybody else. You have to work harder than everybody else, or you should not expect different results.
That makes total sense.
I couldn't agree anymore. I will say that, I had a very pleasant experience at that game lands yesterday with a couple people pulling in right after me. The one kid was probably a little too friendly as he was showing me some of his trail cam pictures and telling me where he was hunting on some really big deer.
Was it on public? Was it public?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was in a public parking spot and he was telling me all about.
No, but I mean, was the spot you seeing the big deer on public as well?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, either this guy's just pulling my chain. I don't know how to take this. I've never had this happen before where somebody pulls out the fence or show me trail cameras from the property that we're in the parking lot of, and then telling me the general direction, which I already know of, and where these deer are. And I'm like, I'm not telling him I know that, but I already know what he's talking about. I just couldn't believe he was legitimately showing me proof.
Were the pictures after dark or in the daytime?
They were mostly all in dark. Yeah.
Because you could be, that's one thing about hunting public land. You may go and hunt some public land, put up some cameras in, spots, let's say oaks out in open timber and stuff, and you might get some nighttime pictures, but it's totally a waste of your time to hunt there in the day,
Definitely.
Because they're not there in the daytime.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I would say 90% of the pictures were at nighttime, but it was still, it kind of blew my mind that he was showing me these pictures of the deer, and his buddy shot a real nice one in there last year. He shot about a 115 to 120 inch buck on that public land.
Nice public land deer.
Yeah. Really good buck. And I was,
very
friendly.
Much? Had that kid killed much as far as deer or not?
Him personally, no. From what I was taking, that he does not kill a whole lot of deer, but apparently he did have an opportunity on a very large deer that he was after in there. And then a lot of guys run their dogs in there. And he said he was full draw on this buck. It was behind a big tree. All that was out was his neck and his head. And all you could hear was jingle, 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 jingle. And here comes the dog. And there goes the deer.
What were they running dogs? What were they running? Rabbits or?
They run a lot of practice dogs on rabbits and squirrels in that area. It's a hugely well-known thing that if you park in that parking lot, there are two people with vans that run dogs consistently through there, and they run them all year long. So
do we tell John the story?
Maybe off air.
Yeah, we'll tell him off air.
Well, let me interject something real quick on what you just said about that kid, because it's getting to the point
Sure.
nowadays where younger guys, and even a lot of middle-aged guys that don't kill a lot, but they want to be part of the excitement. So they've got nice pictures of deer on cameras, and that's their way of intermingling with somebody that's a more serious hunter, is by showing them pictures of deer, because that's all they've got. So
Right.
they just want to interact with people, and because that's all they've got, that's what they have to do. If
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
I do. Yeah. And I mean, kudos to the kid. Super nice kid. Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
Absolutely.
talk to me
yes.
right out. I mean, I was getting ready, trying to put my stuff together. He jumps out still in his work clothes, throws his bow in the back of his truck, and just whips his phone out right off the bat and just starts showing me stuff.
He was all in.
Awesome. Yeah, he was all in. But I always try to make that conversation. The point I guess I was getting to is I always try to create a conversation with people in the parking lot. It can go a long ways. Typically,
Oh,
you at
absolutely.
least, stay out of each other's hair a little bit, kind of communicate, and it should be amicable. The guys that just rush in, jump out of their car, grab their bow, and run into the woods when there's 3 other cars parked there. That guy, I don't want to be that guy.
No.
Personally, but I get it. They're trying to do something. They're either in a hurry because they got a far ways to go. They're trying to hide a spot, whatever. But
Well, let
yeah.
me ask you a question, because did you have signage on your vehicle about your podcasts and stuff? So did he know who you were?
I assume what happened was, and that's a great question because I left that part out. I did have the podcast thing on my truck, but he also had a bunch of stickers on his truck, and I recognized one. One was the PA bow hunting group, which is 2 really close friends of ours that run a pretty decent size social media page here in Pennsylvania. They have a pretty good followage, and I saw the sticker and I went, "Hey, you have a PA bow," and this is like right out the gate after we've kind of met each other. I said, "Oh, you have a PA bow hunting sticker?" No way. He's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I said, "Those are my boys. Like those are my, like, I hang out with those guys. They were just down here, this weekend." And
Yeah, I hunted with
after that,
Adam literally Saturday.
yeah, he hunted with them Saturday. I was there Monday. And I mean, after I said that, you could have swore I was his best friend. At that point, we were hunting buddies.
He was trying to
And
impress me.
Yep, I think that's what it was. I mentioned the
doubt about
stickers on his truck, and he made that connection. And
Yep.
and after that, it was like trail cam picture. I'm like, holy man.
You want to hear a good one? This happened last year. I was in a dollar store down by a place I was hunting on private. And so I was getting a pop on my way out at the dollar store. And there was this guy in there, young kid, and he was in camo. And he noticed me. He knew who I was. And he said, "John Eberhart, can I get a picture with you? Blah, blah, blah." So we go outside and we get this. His buddy took a picture of us, and he couldn't stand it. He did the same thing. He pulled out his cell camera and he showed me this picture of this big buck, and he told me exactly where it was.
Mm-hmm.
So this was during season. This is halfway into season. And I rarely prep new locations during season. I mean, I just don't do it. But I did go over there, and there was this swamp, and he said this swamp was where it was. And I went in there, and I actually just freelanced in there, set up in a tree, and rattled in, not the buck he showed me, but a really nice 8-point, and shot it. So,
Nice.
And I've got a tree.
Awesome.
I got a tree prep this year because that bigger buck made it through. Somebody else had a picture of it.
Wow.
So, but I went in there first sit and rattled in an 8-point in that bedding area.
Yeah.
I've never hunted
That's
there
my
before.
favorite.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories. I've listened to millions and millions of hours of podcasts where other people do the same thing. People slip up, they post it here, they do this. And the social media thing drives me nuts when people post cameras, trail camera pictures. I have a deer, like I was mentioning at the beginning of this podcast, near my work that is the biggest buck I've ever seen in my life. I have never shared those pictures on social media. That was like 4 years ago, 5 years. That deer is probably long gone and dead, but I will not share that picture of that buck on social media. Sorry.
That's a wise man right there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely etiquette going full circle, but at some points you got to cut back a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to maintain any kind of,
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yep, sanctuary of whatever sorts that you may be holding on to.
I have lost.
Because it won't be there long.
I have lost permission on several pieces of property by killing a big deer and having the property owner find out. You know,
Yeah.
I had on this one piece, 20 acres, I killed 3 really nice bucks, and the third one, I shot it in the middle of the day. And while I was dragging it out, it was only 20 acres. There was 3 other guys hunting this 20, but I was hunting by the road. I was literally 50 yards off of the main road, just like you were talking about by that public spot. And they were all set up back in the back where the timber butted up to another crop field. So I'm dragging this buck out in the middle of the day, and I never thought these other guys, any of them, would be coming in to hunt. But as I'm dragging it across the 2-track going back to the guy's house, there was a house in the middle of this 20. He didn't hunt, but he's the one that gave everybody permission. This guy pulled in, and I didn't have time to drag it off to the side or anything, and he saw me with it. And then I had to show it to the property owner, and the property owner's daughter was getting married, and her fiance was a bow hunter, and I was out.
Oh man.
Yep.
Oh, that's happened to me many times over the years. I shouldn't say
Yep.
many, but probably a half a dozen times. As soon as you kill a big buck and the property owner knows about it, he's going to show it to all of his friends and relatives. And then if he's got nephews or kids or brothers or whatever that want to hunt there, well, they're relatives. You're out and they're in. I mean, that's just
Yep.
the normal
Yep.
procedure. Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, and the reality of the situation is when you're in a state like Michigan or Pennsylvania with a number of hunters we know or that we have, that property owner has somebody that he knows
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt.
or is related to that is a hunter
Absolutely.
of some sort. So to even
Well,
get
he was
that
a
permission,
teacher, so you know he knew a lot of kids. It seems
Oh
like
yeah. Oh yeah. It's so funny. I was literally just gonna say that. I was like, you read my mind. Oh man.
that's beautiful, John.
That is
Beautiful.
so funny. Well, John, I want to keep you on the line right after this, but
okay.
we're getting close on time here. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your YouTube videos, you know,
Okay.
how they can get a hold of you, and if they have any questions, all that fun stuff.
Okay. My YouTube channel is Eberhart Outdoors, and I usually post. I've got 73 videos out there so far in the last year and a half, and got one coming out Thursday. The last 4 or 5 are really, really good. There's a lot of good information on it that's current for right now. So that's Eberhart Outdoors. I do whitetail workshops. I do them in March and April during postseason, which is when most people should do their postseason scouting and location prep. Those are 2-day events. I only do 4 of them a year, but they're all in March and April. And I've written 3 books: Bow Hunting Pressured Whitetails, Precision Bow Hunting, and Bow Hunting the Eberhart Way. You can get them on Amazon or on my website at deer-john.net. And I write articles for deer hunting, bow hunter, and my wife thinks I'm an idiot. And that's about all I got.
I totally forgot about the play on the words.
Yeah,
Deer,
it's so good.
DEER
Yeah.
dash or hyphen John.net. That's beautiful.
John, you are the man.
Oh, thank you.
We really appreciate it. We honestly do. We appreciate you coming back on and chatting with
Always
us. I had a blast, man. I had a blast.
I always have fun with these little spontaneous podcasts too. They're kind of fun.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Keep you on your toes.
Yes. Well, I get to reminisce a little bit about things from the past.
Sure.
I
I
love
had
it.
one strange thing that people asked me to do, because I have, since the 80s, every time I've killed a good buck, I've written a story about it. Now
Oh, I like that.
I sucked at English in high school. I almost failed high school because I sucked at English. Now I've written 3 books, and I've written hundreds of hunting articles. So I always write an article or a kill story, you know, where the wind and the property, the layout, why I did this, why I did that. So even though it's a kill story, there's a lot of information in there that people can take away from it. And over the years, I've written 70 or 80 of these. So they've asked me to do these audio videos, which I thought was really, really weird. So basically, I'm just carte blanche about once a month. I'm putting an audio video where I'm reading the article on a black screen. And then during the course of me reading this article and this audio video, there's just a picture of the dead deer with me with the dead deer on the screen. But a lot of people like to listen to it like on their way to work and stuff. And they're usually pretty long, and they're 30, 40 minutes each. So they're pretty in depth, very detail oriented.
Where can people find these?
That's on my YouTube channel.
That's on your. I love that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You can listen
I
to.
didn't notice those before.
Yeah. And yeah, those have been really, I mean, they're not getting a gazillion views. They're getting anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 views in the first, couple weeks. But that's pretty decent for just
That's pretty good.
That's pretty decent.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Especially when you're talking about a video that is just words.
Yeah.
That's
weird. I'm just reading it off a text off the computer.
Yeah, that's impressive.
That is awesome.
I mean, that's like a podcast in itself.
It really is.
Really.
Yeah.
We'll have to check those out for sure. So
Yeah.
head over to the YouTube channel, give John some love here. Check out his website, go to his workshops. I can speak firsthand. The workshops are awesome. Go to those events. If you see him on the calendar, just go. John's very personable. Walk up to him, shake his hand. John, we really appreciate that. You've basically done that with us over, the internet, but we walk up to you, shake your hand. So appreciate you, man.
I love interacting with fellow hunters as long as they're not assholes.
And there it is.
There are some, and sometimes I can be one, but usually I'm not.
I don't see it. You're so sweet.
Not always.
Oh man. So
well, thanks for the opportunity, you guys. And hey, everybody out there, good luck this season, man. Wish you the best.
Yep. Good luck out there. By the time you're hearing this, season's coming. Season should be tomorrow morning.
Yeah. It'll be up Friday.
So good luck to everyone out there. You're hitting the woods. Be safe first and foremost. And hope you all get the buck of a lifetime.